Hello everyone, this is Vikram and welcome to my channel. In this video, we will see how to build container images inside Kubernetes pods using Kubernetes build driver. So we had seen what is a build driver in Docker and how many types of build drivers are there. So basically you have drivers known as Docker driver, Docker container driver, Kubernetes driver, and cloud or remote driver. So in this video, we'll understand what is Kubernetes build driver. Basically, this driver will create build kit pods inside a Kubernetes cluster. And these build kit pods are responsible for building your container images. And these pods run this particular image as a container image. This Kubernetes driver lets you connect your local development environment or CI environments to the builders running inside the Kubernetes cluster. Basically, if you don't have any Docker daemon or any container runtime engine, you cannot build container images, within your local machine or within your CI/CD environment. In this case, you have multiple choices basically. You can either go for Canico to build images within your CI/CD pipelines, or you can connect to a remote Docker instance. The third one is by using Kubernetes build driver, you can connect to the build kit pods running inside the cluster to create your container images, either by being in your local machine or within your CI/CD environments. Okay. And this Kubernetes build driver also supports creating multi-platform images, either by using QEMU technology or by leveraging the native architecture of the nodes that runs your build kit pods. So let's see the documentation once before creating this particular driver. Okay, so I'm just going to go to this build driver section within the Docker documentation. And I'm directly going to go to this Kubernetes driver. And this is how you first create this Kubernetes build driver. So you have to use Docker buildx create and then hyphen bootstrap. So the name of the driver, I'm just calling it as kube, and the driver, you need to set it as Kubernetes. Okay, and also you have multiple options to pass to this driver. In case if you require multiple instances of build kit pods, I can just pass replicas as 2, 3 inside the hyphen driver options. So you have the example below here, hyphen driver options. You have an option to create multiple build kit pods to support multiple parallel builds and also to distribute the build load. And you can also select the namespace. By default, these build kit pods will be created in the default namespace within the Kubernetes cluster. And you have an option to choose a namespace in which these build kit pods will be created. And also you have other options like the requests and limits for the CPN memory can also be set to the pods that are created within the cluster. And not only that, you also have an option to select in which nodes these build kit pods can run by using the node selector. So in case if you have multiple nodes in the cluster, you can select a particular node in which these build kit pods will be created. It is just like manually scheduling these build kit pods within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so for this, basically, we need to have a running Kubernetes cluster. If you already have an existing Kubernetes cluster, you can use it. Basically, whenever you are running this Docker buildx command, you should have, active running Kubernetes cluster somewhere, and you should have the kubeconfig file in the machine where you actually run this Docker command to create this Kubernetes driver. So first, what we'll do is we'll try to create a Kubernetes cluster. You can use any Kubernetes cluster. In my case, I'm just going to create a Kubernetes cluster in the DigitalOcean by creating an account in the DigitalOcean and by going into this Kubernetes section over here. If you have local Minikube cluster, that is also fine. All we require is an actively running Kubernetes cluster and the kubeconfig file. So I'm going to just create a Kubernetes cluster in the DigitalOcean. I'm going to just take a couple of nodes and then we'll just create the cluster. So once the cluster is created, basically DigitalOcean is going to give you the kubeconfig file that you can download from here. And within my local machine, anyways, I have Docker CLI installed. I don't have to have, you know, I mean, basically, I need to have Docker installed. So I'm going to just start the Docker desktop in my local machine as well. From where I'll just try to create this Kubernetes particular driver, build driver. And this is the example that we are going to see. So this is a simple Go-based application. In fact, you don't have to have any of these files. All we require is a Docker file that can build an application. It can be any Docker file. And I also have a README file here using which by referring this, I'll try to create the Kubernetes driver. So the command is directly taken from the documentation. So it is docker build x create hyphen bootstrap. The name of the driver is kube, and the actual driver is of type Kubernetes. You also have Docker container, remote. So we already seen this in Docker build cloud. So where we use driver as a remote. Okay. And then, so once you have the driver created, you can actually build your Docker file by using Docker buildx build. I'm going to use dot as the context to find the Docker file. And this is the tag which I'm going to use. And also I'm sending hyphen push flag so that the image will be pushed to the Docker hub. And here the builder is set to kube because I'm going to use the Kubernetes build driver. That's the reason I'm trying to, I'm giving hyphen builder, which is set to kube. If you don't include this line, what will happen is the default build driver will be used and your images will be built, within your local machine. Okay. So you need to pass the builder as cube so that the Kubernetes build driver will be used. And in order to support multi-platform images, you can also use hyphen platform, and you can give various platforms separated by comma. And your buildx will create all these platform images, and then it will push to the Docker Hub. So now what we'll do is we'll see whether our cluster is created or not. Let me refresh this page. So once we have the cluster, we'll have access to the kubeconfig file. I think it is still in the creation phase. So let's wait until this is created. As you see, the option to download the kubeconfig file is enabled. So I'll just click on this and I'll download the kubeconfig file into my downloads directory. And the thing here is you also need to have Docker CL and Docker install, so which we already have. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just see, all the nodes within the cluster for which I need to have kubectl installed. So I'll leave a link in the description below, using which you can basically download and install kubectl in your local machine. If I try to run kubectl get nodes, basically it will fail. The reason is we are not actually using the correct kubeconfig file to talk to the cluster. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just, you can just move the newly downloaded kubeconfig file into a location called .kube directory. Okay. Otherwise, what I can do is uh, I'll just take that downloaded file called I think this is the downloaded kubeconfig file, and I'm going to replace the file called config within my home directory. Right. So there is this directory called .kube within my home directory, and your kubeconfig file should be basically called config within that directory. So I'm just going to override the default one, but don't override in case if you have a working kubeconfig file. Since this is my local machine, I'm just overriding the default kubeconfig file with the newly downloaded one. And now once I do kubectl get nodes, I'm going to get the nodes within the Kubernetes cluster. And now what I'll do is I'll simply run this particular command to create, the build kit pods within this cluster. So it will take some time. So after that, we will see the pods running inside the cluster. This solution also has the option to, basically open the dashboard. I think from here, or they have removed the option. I'm not sure. So once you click on this cluster, you also have an option to see the official Kubernetes dashboard. I think that is not available as of now. Maybe it is removed. That's fine. You can see our pods are created. So let me just do kubectl get pods. Since we have created only one instance, so this is our actual build kit pod that is running. In fact, you can also use Docker buildx ls to see all the list of builders that you have. We just created this the builder name called Q, which is based on Kubernetes driver. And since I already have the Docker file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just build it by using the Kubernetes builder, and then I'm going to push it to my Kubernetes, push it to my Docker hub. So as you see here, basically it is using the build kit pods that are running within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, I can in fact open another terminal and see kubectl get pods. So let's also check the logs of these pods. So kubectl logs -f and the name of the pod, just to see if I can see any log related to building that particular Docker file. So let me go to the other terminal. Okay, you can see it is actually running the Docker file, all the instructions inside the Docker file. And you can also see some logs within that pod, which shows that the build is actually running here. You can see here, we were able to actually push our image to Docker Hub because we already did Docker login. So this is how you actually use the, Kubernetes driver to build the container images within the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, if I don't provide this, basically if I don't provide this hyphen builder option, so this particular image will be built within the default driver, which means it will be built in our local machine itself. Okay, so it is not basically building or utilizing the build kit pods inside the cluster. So it is actually running within our local machine. So this is how you use Kubernetes driver to build container images within the cluster. So once I'm done, I'm going to select the Kubernetes cluster, go to actions and destroy, because I don't require this. It is charged, right? So I'm going to just give the name of the cluster by copy pasting from here and then click on destroy, and you won't be charged. Okay. Thank you, and I'll see you the next one.